Okay. Well, thanks for coming, and I appreciate everybody who's helped contribute for the trip. I mean, it was an amazing adventure, and it was great to go after you know, helping Fintonia and that for so many years, and to actually go see it was just unbelievable. Um, well, let me go ahead and start with prayer real quick. Uh, Heavenly Father, we thank you for your creation and this beautiful day that you made for us, and um, we thank you that we're able to help brothers and sisters around the world as we are. And Lord, we just ask for guidance and for blessings upon our churches. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Okay, so this is at New York where we met up with Scott and his people. I guess I got a pointer there. So yeah, I don't think the pointer's working right. So anyways, so to my right is Scott and Christina, and then to my left is an elder and his wife from the church in Louisiana. Um, Besides Scott and Christina is Paul Hausman and Betsy Roomer, and her husband is behind her. And then next to her is Dana Katzenberg, who's the president of Edunations in the United States, president here. And her sister is right next to her, and her daughter's right behind her. So we actually had a pretty big team. I guess usually when they go, they have a few less people. Usually they don't have. I think we had 12. Because there was another couple from New York. Can't remember the name off the top of my head, but he was one of the actual original founders that helped found Edunations, and he came down since they were having the graduation at Ricasa. Him and his wife traveled down. And this is the new airport in Freeport. Just at the other end of the runway is the old airport, and it looks, I mean, it was really a pretty, old-looking airport. This was us gathered outside. The one guy over here in the striped shirt, that's Isaac. He's one of he's the number 2 guy in country in Sierra Leone for Edunations. And he came to help get us. And interesting, when we were at the airport, we had all this luggage lined up to go through the one X-ray machine they had going through customs, and the one guy, he asked me who we were, and I told him we were coming over to visit Edunations and go to graduation at. And he just let us go on through. Well, later I found out that Isaac came in with a guy who was like a paramilitary guy that had a .45 holster in his front with a .45 in it, and like I think when the guy saw that, then he thought we were important, so he let us go. But I come to find out on the trip home, or trip to McKinney from the airport, he told us that recently the chief of police in McKinney had been shot, and like nobody really has guns in country other than the military. And they couldn't figure out, they were worried that there was going to be trouble starting, so the government allowed them to have, the police in McKinney to have this extra paramilitary unit kind of help them for a while. And so they brought a couple of them with us to pick us up at the airport. And after that, we hadn't had to have them with us. So it wasn't, at first you're kind of worried, but we didn't have any of the paramilitary guys with us the rest of the time, and we didn't need them. So that's on the way to McKinney, and that was the first sunset that I saw in Africa. And it has, so the ground there is kind of like when you get down south in Georgia and things, it's red like that. So I think that's why every night it was like a red sunset like that. And so yeah, this was actual road here. So this is at our hotel, and this is the area that we usually ate in. It had a couple big tables there, and there was other guests in this hotel, so it was we had buffet style most of the time, and there was some stuff we could eat, like boiled eggs and things like that. This was the courtyard in the hotel, because we did stay at a pretty nice hotel, and it was pretty safe. It was all walled in and everything for in the town, and this is like the courtyard outside, and that's where we would go in down at the far end there. And this is from our patio on my room, and so one day I was able to call at school. We had these life formation groups, leadership formation groups, every Wednesday afternoon at lunchtime, and one of my friends was there that I had on WhatsApp, and so I called him when I was there, and he's talking to me, and he goes, my leader there, he goes to Egypt twice a year to teach at the seminary in Egypt, and he goes, "Is that the hotel you're staying at?" He goes, "Wow." He goes, "You're in a 5-star hotel for Africa." So, and it was pretty nice. I mean, the room, it was basic, but it was clean and everything. And then I found a gecko in our room the one day, and which he would scare me whenever I'd find him because he was pretty big, and then he would scurry off. But he ate all the bugs. We didn't have any bugs in our room. Other people had bugs in their room, so I didn't complain. Now, this is Edunations headquarters in McKinney. And we got together on the first morning we were there, and they had a meeting. We had a meeting in the conference room they had set up. And that's where they were talking about having problems in Bentonia. And I think I sent an email back to the church after that meeting because they were having problems with the villagers allowing their children to go to Ricasa to do senior secondary school there because it was like a boarding school, like they would be there for the whole school year. And a lot of them were turning Christian, and they were worried at all, the Islamic ones were worried their kids were going to turn Christian, so they were kind of pushing back against that. And later when we had our meeting, I'll bring up more along those lines. This is right across the street from the headquarters. They had a microfinancing group set up that Edunations had set up to kind of help make some money with the money that they did have. One of the people they would donate, or they would lend money to people, little business people that needed money, or like women that were starting businesses and things like that. But the other one that was good was they would, the teachers still had to take some extra classes to stay like certified, like kind of you do here too. And so they were able to lend money to the teachers, and basically they were just taking it out of their paycheck. Yeah, Mark. I don't think they didn't lend out like large sums of money. I'm thinking. I don't know how much I'm sure they told us kind of what they lent out, but I think it was equivalently they had. I want to say they had like about $60,000 that they would lend out. I mean, that they had to lend out, and everything was not in huge sums of money and for everybody. But I'm trying to think because like it was 20 leones to $1, so it was like a lot of leones, like hundreds of thousands of leones would only be like $1,000. So it was kind of hard to keep track of what things really cost and when you went back and forth with the money. But it helped the teachers a lot be able to get certified and move up, and where otherwise if they were in another school where they didn't have that opportunity for the microfinance. So that's one thing. And I think on Edunation's website, if you wanted to donate to them, you can. Huh? Hey, Nancy. What's that? I don't know. It might be one of the guys up front. The guy in the green shirt doesn't look familiar, so it might be his. That might be one of the microfinance places, jobs. I don't know.
Are you hiding in the back there?
Yeah, usually. Trying to think what I was wearing that day. Yeah, I'm like, you just see the top of my head. So, and this is us all in front of the Edunations headquarters before we did a trip to a village that was close to a school that was close to McKinney. It only took us about maybe an hour to get there. So we were able to do our meetings and stuff in the morning and then go visit them in the afternoon when it was really hot. I think, okay, so this is where we're going into the town. the students would be all lined up for us. They would like start the oldest students, they would go down to the littlest students. I don't know if on this one how far we go into the group there, but that's it. And this is the same line here. And they'd have signs welcoming us there and thanking us, and they were all really thankful that they were able to get education there, and that we had supporters supporting them. I think it's probably cooler. I think is why cooler and easier. I didn't really see any like barbershops or anything when I was there, like when we were in the towns or anything. So I'm sure that's probably because it's easier. This was the pastor at the place we went to was McCump Station, which used to be a railroad stop, but there's no railroad there anymore. But that's what the little village is called. And there's the pastor there that we're laying hands on and praying for him and his wife. And it was a little small. It was a very smaller school, and this is the first time I ever heard of McCump Station when I was there, so it's fairly new. And before we left, these guys showed up with a bunch of coconuts and were chopping the tops off so we could drink the coconut water out of them, which were really good. And it was really hot, so it was really, kind of helped. And there's Scott and Christina with a group of kids. The littlest ones in the pink shirts are like kindergarten and preschool kids. And then you just went up from school. Actually, I think for as big as the kids are here, I think it was only primary school here. Most of the other villages had primary and then a junior secondary school, which was like 7th, 8th, and 9th grade, I think. So the next day, So anyways, the next day when we were going to Fentonia, which was took us about 6 hours or more to get to Fentonia on the drive. And so we stopped. We had a town we stopped at halfway, but somebody had the bathroom before we got there. And this was the bathroom we stopped at. And it was a place that actually the U.S. Agriculture Department was funding to help people learn how to grow different stuff in the area. And so there was a bathroom, and that's the size of the bathroom there. So in the town, it was halfway between. We were on the way to Fentonia. There was this is a guest house called the White House, and it was a good place to stop and do a bathroom break and get something to drink and stuff like that on the way there. So as you're going along the road, there was always women walking with these buckets on their heads that someone would have fruit in it. Some other ones would have like flip-flops. I mean, they'd be anything that they could sell. They would carry them around like that. And I know Christina commented a lot about how proud they look and how they're always dressed up nice with nice, colorful, clean-looking stuff. This was driving through that town on the way out, and actually the road we're on here, Samuel was telling us that it was paved at one time, or it was newly paved, and then everybody got upset with the local politician that paved it, and so they went out and started tearing up the road, and it was really rough, and so really one of the better ways to get around town was on a motorcycle. I took a picture of this place. We stopped to get air in a tire because we had our tire going low, and because it was a place I would have been hanging out when I was a kid, I'm sure, a motorcycle place. And so when we got to the river, the people couldn't ride across, and only the driver went in the vehicle, and everybody else had to get out and go across on these dugout canoes. And they were like really dugout canoes. I mean, they were a tree that were dug out. And they were really stable. Nobody had an issue, I think, getting across. And then this here's a guy on a motorcycle going to take all that stuff up there. So they really piled them up. I saw one motorcycle that had 5 people sitting on the motorcycle riding somewhere. So They really pack them on there, and that's basically what public transportation. Like people could rent those guys to take them places and things. And then I have another picture. I don't think I have a picture in here, but there's one where they put the motorcycle in the dugout canoe and took it across because it was quicker and probably cheaper. And it was, I was pretty impressed with that because, I mean, throwing a motorcycle in there and then paddling across and everything was fine. And this was the one truck. This is the truck I usually rode around in. It was more comfortable, and everybody else thought it was like it wasn't as comfy as the other ones, but it was a better truck to ride in. Okay, so here, this is the only wildlife I saw when I was there. If you at the base of the tree, on this side of the tree, there's a monkey sitting there that would come out every once in a while. Yeah, right there. He would come out every once in a while, and then he'd run off. Probably when kids started coming around, and then he would come back out and watch us again. And that's the only wildlife we saw the whole time. And there's one of the trucks coming off. I think it's. So they had a truck that was loaded with bags of cement that they unloaded a bunch of bags and a rebar, and that's why it's laying there on the ramp. We had to go off to the ramp, and there's a pile of bags of cement that guys were unloading when we got there. Yeah, fortunately they let us go by because as we were coming back to go back across, the truck passed us straight before the village. So it took them that long, the whole time we were at Bentonia, to get that truck, everything on the truck across. Yeah, isn't the greatest, most fastest way to get across the river there. This is the primary school at Bentonia, and one of the classes that we were visiting. This is he's the head teacher at the primary school. What's that? The primary school again.
I think the primary school was already built when we got there.
Yeah, I think it was pretty.
Previously, but it needed to be done.
Yeah, it doesn't have windows in it now. It just has.
Well, I mean, I don't think it is that bad.
Yeah. I'm sure it probably didn't look as nice as what they were. But all the kids were always, they had their rehearsed speech that they would stand up when you came in and they'd greet you and everything and thank you for helping them. And these were the kids in town that were just hanging out because they weren't actual students at the school. And so there was a few, every one of the ones we went to, there was a few kids that were there that weren't in uniforms.
If there was enough funding, would those kids be in school?
Probably. I mean, but all the classes were pretty full, too. So this was like a kindergarten class, if I remember right. And they were singing, I think, when we came in to see them. Yeah, these are still primary school kids. One of the children at Scott and Christina support. And there's one of the girls that I gave a letter to. So whoever supports someone in Patonia, I didn't keep track of who. They ran us through pretty quick. So, and there's another one. And then this is the girl that Stacy and I support. And so we supported it was like I've waited all my life to get there. Well, all my life, the past 10 years to maybe go there and meet her. And I get there and I'm like, I was just like, didn't know what to say, it was weird. So eventually I came back. Well, they were taking exams, so I felt like I was interrupting their exams too. But I mean, I guess they probably didn't mind. Because when I came back to ask the teachers questions about her, they were like, hey, ask her. And I brought her out and we were talking and everything. And here she was 17 and she wants to go to Ricasa to the senior secondary school. And I believe she wanted to be a lawyer or a journalist, because there was another girl I met at Ricasa who was from Patonia, and she wanted to be a lawyer, one or the other. One was the other. There was another one. So, but we supported two people in two girls in Frantonia, and in January the one quit school. So that's what. So I asked them about that, and with what it was is her parents wouldn't let her go to senior secondary school, so she left home. Basically, she was in McKinney, which was where the headquarters was at, and the girl or the woman there who is what they called the psychosocial representative, that she would go out in the villages and she would help out with the girls if girls had problems, if their parents wanted to marry them off and things like that. So she would go and help work out those situations. And she was in contact with her. So I asked her if I could meet her since she's in town, and they said they would set that up. And we had our meeting with the locals, and they decided that they would let their kids go to Ricasa. And so I expected to meet her the next day, and I didn't. And I asked them, and here, after our meeting, she was heading back. She was traveling back to go back home. So hopefully that was good. I haven't heard anything otherwise since then, and they were supposed to let me know, but they don't get the Frantonia that often because it was like I said, it was a 6-hour ride. We left early at like 6 in the morning, and we got back at about 10:30 at night. So it was a long trip. This is what we had for lunch. They make stuff they call crane, which is the cassava leaves, and it's really spicy. It tastes really good, but sometimes it doesn't look very good, especially if you don't feel good, But they had a lot of fruit, pineapple with mango, which was always really good, and bananas. They had bananas that were green, but they were like the best tasting bananas I've ever had because they were probably fresh, right, from that day. This is we're going up the hill towards the church in Frantonia, the church that we all help raise money to help build it. And, Paul, who is from Memorial Park Church, was there last year, and he said when I was talking about going to Frantonia in the church and we helped build it, he said it was the biggest church of all the villages. And it was pretty big inside, and it has a real big altar area up at the front. And so that's where we would have our town meetings. We're in the church. And then we would get in there, and it would be all the local leaders had to be introduced, and then all of us would get introduced. And it took hours to do these meetings. And they basically talked about. So here I had a picture of the girl that dropped out of school, and so Samuel used it to bring up that she wasn't there anymore, and he was, as part of the issue of not sending our kids to Ricasa or letting them finish school. And Frantonia is a real kind of mountainous area right in here. It kind of looks kind of leveled out, but they're all pretty steep, little steep hilltops and everything. But the school has like a pretty big area. I want to say Samuel said they had like 15 acres right there that the village donated to them for this. And there's the bell for school, that big air tank cylinder. This was in our meeting inside the church. The gentleman there in the white, he used to be like the paramount chief in the area. And one of the other problems was that Frantonia used to be like the head where the paramount chief was at, and politics had changed, and another village was like where the paramount chief was. And but his son was the one that was graduating and was the valedictorian of the class at Ricasa. So it wasn't too hard to convince him to let his children go, or let the children go to school there. And I don't have the video of it, but at his graduation speech, he did talk about when he went, he's Islamic. He wanted to start an Islamic group. And all of the schools have like a chapel element to it, or a Christian chapel element to it. And I don't know if he did or not, but at graduation, he talked about Jesus Christ being a Savior. So he obviously became Christian while he was there. But his father was real proud because he was the valedictorian and everything. And then also, he got they gave out a few scholarships for the top male and top female. and he got that too. So he's getting college and everything paid for and stuff. So they their hearts kind of changed a little bit once finally somebody is actually graduating from there and be able to go to college. And this is the area we were sitting in. In Freetown, definitely, and there was a couple in McKinney too, but they weren't real big. I mean, they were like the White House that I showed. It was a place like that, a couple of them. So they were like, they were universities, but they weren't like, universities is what we think of them as. And the other thing is that I found out, because I'm trying to figure out how much college costs there. So I'm talking to one of the number 2 guy about it, and it's like $300 to $500 a year, basically, for tuition. So if that ever issue comes up and your student wants to go to college and ask, or we're not looking at it. I think it probably costs more to support a student the whole way through senior secondary school than it does college. So that's and there's me sitting there, and we kind of all went around. They had some fans running for us, thankfully. It wasn't too bad in this meeting. It was we were there in the afternoon, where it's a little hotter, but it seemed to go fast. And the school students, they would have students that would play or sing for us and everything, and do a little production in part of it too. I think this is after our meeting, and they all wanted to come up and visit. So at Fentonia, they're building, these are teachers' apartments they're building. Most of them are most of those don't have like running water and everything, and like we're used to. It's mainly just a bedroom for a lot of them. And but at least they're getting them. And this house here was the guest house that we helped provide. And everybody's leaving. This is when we were getting ready to leave. I don't know if it starts over again. So when we were there, also the school gifted Scott a goat, and yeah. Well, I saw a lot of goats. I'll put it that way. And on the road back was like hours of bouncing. He was still there when we got there. There was a couple we hit going really fast because it was starting to get dark and we were in a hurry. And I thought for sure we wouldn't have a goat when we got there, but he was still in there. And no, he didn't. Samuel kept him. Samuel was telling us that a goat like that size could feed a family of 10 for like 10 days. So it could, so when someone got gifted an animal, Samuel got it because he helped feed his family and whoever else he has. Huh?
Where did the power come from? You had the fan.
Yeah, they had generators in these areas. Some places had actual like power, like the hotel had actual power to it, but they also had a big generator to kick in and take over when power would go out, because the power had gone out a few times when we were at the hotel. But once you got out of the bigger cities, you just would have to run everything off a generator. And they were planning on building a highway from McKinney the whole way up through Fentonia to Guyana. And as we were along the way, there was a couple places where they had some power stations set up and power lines kind of run out along the road to help with building the road. And I guess that project kind of had fizzled out or something. And so there's places where there was power lines, but I don't think anybody was really using them that much. But basically, you ran everything off generators, or the fans would have had to been on generators, but the lights and stuff a lot would be on solar. They had a lot of solar panels on houses and stuff to run, like the lower draw type items. So this is the inside the guest house. It has like a living room, and there's a bedroom here, which is one Scott stayed in when he was there, and another bedroom, and then straight back is the bathroom, which actually had toilets and stuff in it. It wasn't like the ones with just the holes in the floor, which is nice. So on our way back, when we crossed the river, there was a guy fishing there, and I stopped. Well, I took pictures of him when we were there too. So on the way, trying to think where. So after we crossed the river, they were working on the road, so we had to take a detour. So we went on this. This is our detour. This little road. It's as wide as the truck, and it went through like jungle, and it went through like little villages where there was like huts, and you would go, all the roads would go like right through the middle of the village, and there'd be huts on each side and stuff, which were kind of interesting. And then if any kids saw you, they would yell "Puto, Puto," which means like a white person, basically. So I don't think that translates exactly that, but that's about the best I got out of my driver is what it meant. So, and one of the girls on the way back from Fentonia started to get sick, so they went ahead and they came up to the clinic in the next town, which is where this place is at, where they had this big shipping container. There was a clinic inside of it, and she got some IVs and she was okay after a day or two. It was Dana's sister, and the bad thing was so this is just one of the river. This is probably the only river other than one we crossed with the ferry that we saw when we were there, a big river. But she had to take. She is the missions person for Grace Church in Cranberry, and that's Dana's husband's the pastor there. And so a month after we were there, she had to take a group to Kenya. So I think she was kind of worried about being sick when she was there, but I didn't hear anything about her being sick there, and I saw pictures and stuff of her stuff in Kenya, so she seemed to do good. But yeah, the people were down there washing clothes and taking baths and stuff, and right off the bridge. And so then on that day where we were crossing that river, we went to Mapinda School, and can't remember that. So this is Pastor James, who was the pastor at Fentonia when we started supporting them. And his wife had passed away and so he's been remarried now, but he's closer to McKinney, which is a bigger town now, and Mapinda is where his church is at. And he builds the ovens everywhere where he's at. He pushes the ovens and the bread. So we showed us this oven, but he told us that they weren't able to get flour because of the war in the Ukraine was making flour so expensive. So they haven't been making that. Now this was in one of the classrooms. They had the religious and morals education with their class, and so I had some serious questions on the board. So I took a picture of it. Like the first one says, list 2 natural attributes and 2 moral attributes of God. So really, until I went to the seminary, I don't think I would have been able to answer that question. So they're learning some good stuff. And the villages were pretty far from Mapinda that kids would come to school. I want to say they were like 23 miles away, some of them. And so they started a bike program at this school to help kids, give bikes for kids so they could get to school easier. That's Pastor James's house. And this was a thing he made to roll out the bread dough whenever he would be able to get flour. This was inside the church here at Mapinda. And it was a little smaller, but it was the same deal where the kids came in and sang for us and stuff, and we introduced back and forth with the community and us, and then they had their meeting about any issues they had. There's the group there, and this, if you remember back in January, one of the school buildings had the roof tore off of it in a storm. And this is the building, and this was in April, and they had it already replaced and everything. So they're working good on it. Then there's Mayata was the other small village we went to that day. And this was the church there, back across the river. Now this is in McKinney in downtown, and I took a picture because like the streets are always packed, and there was this big arch up here where there's a big roundabout where there's like all these vendors everywhere up here, and yeah, it was pretty unbelievable how so much traffic's going around, people walking, people driving motorcycles, and I didn't see anybody wreck or anything, you know, and it was pretty. It was kind of fun driving around in the front vehicle and you could see all that stuff. Yeah, see how this guy just comes out. And that one goes across in front of us. Okay. So these were, I think in Mayete was where these little kids were hanging out. And these were a couple of kids that would probably go to school, but they haven't got a sponsor. And this is when we came into the village. They, again, lined up for us, had signs for us and everything. Actually, this might be, okay, so this is at Benicurro. Now, Benicurro was another one of the villages we went to, but it was more of a tropical area, more jungle. It was kind of strange. It was like each village we went to was a little different. Like Fintonia was kind of a little bit like here, but more arid. And then Mayete and all them were more dry and plains-like. And this one was more kind of hilly, had jungle, or a lot more lush. And this was just walking up to the school. This was the church at Benicurro. And there it is from the side. Our meeting inside. That's the school giving us their presentation. And some of them had drums. And when I was there, the pastor there had a motorcycle, so he gave me a ride. And he rode me up through the village, so I got to wave at everybody. Because everybody's like, yeah. But it was much more comfortable riding on that motorcycle than in the back of some of the nicer vehicles. So they even had clergy on the front because he was the pastor. And this was the only place I saw cattle, too. I thought I'd see cattle there, but it was only up in Benicurro, or as we got close to Benicurro. And actually, most of the road was paved to Benicurro. But about the last, I think, 8 miles were dirt road. But these roads were like, so most of the rock there is like granite, really hard rock. And the road was like a washed out riverbed at times where you'd be like you were really four-wheeling it through there, like on you see the Jeeps on the commercial doing and stuff. And again, another lady walking. So this was the birthing center they have at Benicurro. And the government had given them some monies to help remodel. And I think, I just kind of went in. They had all rooms emptied. These were kind of the office side, but she took me in the back portion of it where the birthing rooms were at. And the nurse there, she had told me that they had so we were there in April. She told me in March they had birthed 14 babies there the month before. So they were. I thought it was really interesting that they had this here, because I don't think any of the other towns had a birthing centers in them like that. This is outside the oven here at Benicurro. It was the same oven set up and the same deal. They didn't have flour to make stuff. This girl was just drying out rice or something on their front porch there. This was like a kitchen area where they had little fires in there to cook the food. And then this lady's house, which you'll see in a little bit, she's making, off to the left here, she's going to be making palm oil, where they have, so I'm not sure what those were. And I didn't ask, I should have asked. I think those were more like a beans, and the other ones were something that they got off from the palm trees, and some other like those look like vanilla pods, but and that was rice that they were drying out on the ground. So this lady here, she's making palm oil, and she's I think it. So anyways, yeah, and the baby's in the back, and they have yeah, here we go. So she has a fire going where they're boiling the palm nuts to get them soft, and then she pounds them to death and pulverizes them, and then they put them in a thing where they squeeze it real hard to get the oil out of them. And they mainly use the oil for cooking, so it's like an essential thing for them to cook with. And so right now, Samuel's talking to her about letting her show us the inside of the house, which is this video. And I could have done better in the house, but as soon as we got inside, I got distracted because there's a motorcycle there and chickens and and there was one bedroom here, and I think they had four children, four people slept in there. The lady.
What'd they do? Wheel you in on a stretcher?
Yeah, I don't know why I was taking it weird like that, but that's the only video I had of it. So, and that was one of the girls from the school. And then this lady behind her, she's from Mexico, and she just felt led to go to Sierra Leone to help with Ebola, and she kind of got connected with Edunations there through, I don't remember, a long time ago. Scott had talked about there was some pastor who was from Mexico City that went over with them one time, and I think she talked to him, and he had set it up for her to go there. And she was looking for someone to finance her being a missionary with them. She would go out to the villages and stay there for a week, and she would go out to the outlying villages from there and teach people how to play the guitar. And she was getting a good response even from the imams in those villages. Were all like that she glad that she came and that she believed in Jesus, and they were all willing to let her come back anytime she wanted to. So this is in Kabbalah, which is on the way to Benicuro. And it's, as you pull in, they have a big sign over. Basically, it's the witch doctor capital of the world, or of Sierra Leone, anyways. This was like a guest house that was up on the one hillside. A lot of areas would have the steep mountains like this. Ricasa was more like a plain, going out that way, so it was a lot flatter. But we were also a lot closer towards Freetown and towards the ocean. And this was the house there. And this lady, I think she was Asian, but we're in this house, and it was a place you could stop and get drinks and things. So I got a Coke while I was there, because my one friend from school who's from Uganda, she loves Coca-Cola because that's the drink of Uganda too. And so I'd get her a 6-pack of Coca-Cola bottles and stuff once in a while and give to her. So on the way, they had the online betting sign billboard along the way to Ricasa. I was like, I couldn't believe it, but I guess they're everywhere. So this was the group. I was in the front seat, and they had everybody wedged in the back seat. This is our truck. And so this is when we got to Ricasa coming in. And they had signs set up for greeting each person. I think I have a sign there for me. I'm not sure. Greeting each of us had a sign greeting like Pastor Scott or Scott Graham, and one for me. And a lot of these, they were the senior second. Most of the other schools had younger people. But this one also had a primary and a junior secondary school here at Ricasa too. This was the house we stayed in. You see, it has some solar panels on the top. When they built it, it was designed to just run solely on solar, not have to use a generator. But Paul was telling me that the year before when they stayed there, it was really hot, and they couldn't run the fans because the solar power wasn't enough to run the fans. So, so Dean Weaver made him get up and go wake up the guys and make them get a generator out in the middle of the night to get the fan going. So, but it was pretty nice little. I mean, they had like 4 bedrooms in each corner and a bathroom in between each side, and it was called Pa Loyal House. So when we would go to the villages, like the oldest man in the village was named Pa, whatever his name was. So that meant he was like the oldest. Loyal was Dean Weaver's dad's name, and he helped, when he passed away, he donated the money to help build this building, so that's why they call it Pa Loyal House. This was inside. I think this is a video a little bit. And see, there's like each corner has a bedroom, and that was a picture of Dean Weaver's dad. And then there's a bust of Dean Weaver with his little hat on and everything. And so everybody had to get their picture taken with him. This was the setup for us eating. We had a guy named Ali who would come in, and he took care of us, cleaned our place up, and took care of everything. He would even, that's him there on the porch. So a lot of times it was cooler just to sit outside at nighttime. And I was trying to read, because I was trying to read one of my school books and get through it. And just seemed to get distracted a lot when I was there, so I wasn't good at reading while I was there. But and this was in the evening, and the sky started to turn purple there for us. And then that was one of the clear nights we had, where we could see a lot of the stars, so we tried to take a picture of that. So when I was reading one day, the kids discovered me, and they started crowding me. And I always mark my pages with little Post-its where I want to go back to and for when I write my paper. And they discovered those, so they took them and said I got to give every one of them a Post-it. And they thought those were pretty cool. And then more of them showed up. Yeah, it kind of got bad at one point. They didn't want to leave. I took a picture of this so I could show my kids about kids carrying stuff on their heads like that. When we were going to Benny Curl, I saw some guys along the road that were carrying like parts of a tree. I mean, like 6-foot trunks logs on their heads. They might not have been real heavy, but it didn't look comfortable. One of the previous trips over, groups from Memorial Park, what they did is they built a playground and like a volleyball court and basketball court for Ricasa School there. That building there is the senior secondary school. And this is part of the kitchen. It's kind of out in the central area. And they feed all the kids, like 300 kids from the kitchen there. The guy in the light teal is the new paramount chief for that area. And he came to visit because he knew that we were having the big graduation and all the people were coming in a couple days. And he was going to make everybody a chief, honorary chief. But at the last minute, he wasn't able to come, and I think it's because he couldn't figure out how to make everybody a chief. But I don't think most of us really wanted to be a chief. But Paul was talking to him, and he said he was really astounded of all the stuff they had there at the school. He couldn't believe that there was that much stuff there, like the big school and the playgrounds and the dorms and everything. So it was it got a lot of publicity for them. This is their computer lab, which there's a few computers in there, but not many. And a lot of the kids, when we had meetings with them, were talking about like colleges in the United States and stuff. And so I'm telling them, like, well, just go online and look and talk to them, because I mean, a lot of colleges would scholarship kids from foreign countries that come there. And then here I'm talking to them, and here they don't have the internet there or anything, so it's like kind of mute. This was their science lab, and they had a pretty nice lab. One of the things that they brought up in our meetings we had with them was that they didn't have a lot of supplies to do experiments with, like for chemistry experiments or anything like that. They had problems getting stuff. Talked to Scott a little bit about it, and he said that Jericho Road is a nonprofit that helps puts clinics out in areas, and they were trying to get something going with them to bring chemicals in through them, but they hadn't gotten very far. So you see their storerooms had a lot of stuff, but they didn't have stuff to do anything with. This is the librarian, and she I think I have a. Well, this is at the courtyard of the senior secondary school. It's 2 stories, and what's that? No, that's the school. Yeah. And so may I get a little swing around the library here. So this was the library, and they had I think in this corner over here there was the sign said Larry's Corner or something like that. So we asked her who Larry was. Larry was the first librarian there, so that's why it was named that. But and she was telling us too that kids can come there and use books, but they weren't allowed, like here where you would check it out and take it home. Everything had to stay in the library, so things wouldn't walk off, I'm guessing. But they had some stuff, but I'm sure, like, by our standards, it was pretty sparse. This was Pat and Nancy's sponsor at Rocasa. Muhammad. Yeah, and he wanted to be a civil engineer and build stuff, is what we were talking about, and that's what he wanted to do. I tried to get him to say hi, Pat and Nancy, but he had his speech in his head, and he wasn't yeah. So this is the clinic that Jericho Road takes care of at Rocasa. And we were there, there was a student there who had elephantitis, and I've never seen it in my life, but his leg from the knee down looked like an elephant leg. I mean, it was weird. It was really swelled up, and he was in a lot of pain when we were talking with him. And again, Paul talked to one of the other students that could not believe that he was a senior also. So he'd been there for 3 years, and he said he couldn't believe that he could study and do his schoolwork and everything with all the pain he was in, because he was in pain all the time. There was a picture of it, but I didn't put it in here. So Edunations went ahead and got him moved to an Italian clinic that was nearby that could operate on him. And we took up a collection, and it was like $350 to get his leg amputated below the knee, so that he could not be in pain anymore and stuff. And so we did that, and he was real grateful that and I think he was able to graduate this year, because he had kids. So the kids were at Ricasa, we graduated. We did the ceremony. But they still had to take like the written exam for the national written exam to actually graduate high school. And I think he was able to do that. So this was a centipede, and I saw a lot of them here. He was probably about 6 inches long, and one of the guys told me that if it walks across your bare skin, it really hurts. So I don't know if that's the legs or if there's something on it but I wasn't going to test it out and find out. This is inside the girls' dorm, one of the bedrooms. They had them all decorated up. The girls did. The guys didn't so much. You know how guys are. And this was the house the house parents' room. And this is off our front porch looking out. That's the church up there, the big yellow building, and the school's off to the right there, the senior secondary school. And each dorm was named after one of the founders of Edunations, and they had a Scott Graham house for the boys. And then the one that burnt down, I think that's where we're walking to. But these are the dorms. There was want to say there were 7 of them, and there was definitely more boys' dorms than girls' dorms, but they were pretty full. I think they had like about 30 to 60 kids. I think each of them had like 2 sides to them, and I think there was like 60 kids in each side. And this is the one that burnt down that they're rebuilding. And when we were there, we took fire blankets over for them, which we helped raise money for them and get those. And so we showed them. So Scott got to demonstrate how to use those, and so that would help. I guess what happened here is they were doing something with an experiment with charcoal. And so one of the kids brought some charcoal home with him because he was going to use it to help iron his clothes, and didn't realize that some of it was already lit. And then later on it caught everything on fire. And nobody got hurt, which was a good thing. So see, all the boys have like these pink shirts on. So they would have like their uniforms on during school, and all the ones that were in the senior secondary school had these uniforms so that they could tell that they weren't like from the village and things to mingle. Because I guess they had issues where Sam Wells said there was one senior secondary school student who got an 8th grade local girl pregnant and things like that. And so I think that's kind of helped them keep them separate from the village. And this is what the boys' rooms look more like, which I can understand that. That's what they would look like. But each one had their own bed, which most of them at home where they came from didn't have their own bed. They'd probably have to share it with a bunch of people. Yeah. So these were girls that were greeting Betsy for the Betsy Rumors house, and they had this good song going for her and everything. Yeah, it's funny. All the girls are out waiting for everybody. The guys. So this is a girl I met. Her name is Sama, and she's from Fatonia. Because I asked when we were at the one door if anybody's from Fatonia, and she knew Hawa, which is our one girl we support, and she wanted to be. Now she either wanted to be a lawyer or a journalist. It was one of the two. So. And on the way to church one night, there was a toad out in the middle. So I had to take a picture of an African toad. That was something, So, so this is the church at Rocasa. And it was the biggest church we were there because it had all the students and stuff do their chapel and everything in there. And so like that, it was pretty full. They had 300 students in the senior secondary school. And right now they were singing. They had a pretty lively church service. That's one thing I'll have to say. And again, the church from where our house was at. Those were the soccer fields in between there with the goats walking around in it and stuff. And Betsy, on Sunday, Betsy Rumor preached, and Fatu, who was the psychosocial worker, she interpreted for her. And Sunday night, graduation was on Monday. Sunday night, they had a big party for all the seniors that were graduating, and each senior had one parent come stay with them the night before, and so they were invited to it also. And I think that was all the teachers from the senior secondary school. And then later they had us all come up there, and we had to dance too, but we didn't have any video of that. So when we first got there to McKinney, on the first day, they had a tailor measure us for shirts and dresses. And when we were there before graduation, they gave us all the dresses and shirts. And fortunately, mine fit. I was given one from one of the other pastors, I think at Benny Curro, and it was, I could get it like here, and I couldn't get it over me anymore. And but a lot of them, they had some weird fabric. Like I think Scott and Christina's had like dice and cards on it, like it was a gambling fabric or something, you know. So, and the guy in the middle, Paul, his had like fans, like a table fan, you know. They had fans on it. And that's Samuel and his wife. And this is Isaac, who was the number 2 guy in Edunations there, and his wife, Josephine, and his son, Isaac Jr. Isaac, we had talked, Isaac rode with us a lot, and we talked to him a little bit about when he was just a little boy during the wars, or the rebels, he said. And he had some interesting stories. His family lived in a refugee camp in Sierra Leone, closer towards one of the borders with Liberia. And yeah, he had some interesting stories. And he seemed to be pretty concerned about things happening again, especially with the elections coming up and everything. And I still don't think they're completely set yet who's the winner was. So this is on graduation day. They had all the students lined up, the graduating students, and then they had the teachers, which are all in the T-shirts, and then we were after them. And so we all marched up. They had a little drum band that led us up there, and we went up to the church, and we went in, and then we sat up in the front there. So there's like me up in the back corner there. And it was really hot this day. It had to be in the hundreds or above 100, and it was hot and sweaty in there. They had fans going for us, which helped. And I drank quite a few bottles of water in 4 hours that we were sitting there. So these were all the teachers, and these were all the graduating students there, and their parents and stuff were in the back. And a lot of the other secondary students were up there in the balcony. And so they had a lot of... They had the minister of development there. They had a couple other, like, the assistant minister of education, some things like that. They had different schools where they had people come and speak. And so it was a pretty long ceremony going through all that. And these poor guys all sitting there. It's like towards the end, you could tell they were as uncomfortable as we were. So they have like 3 like subject areas set up. One was science, which these group, they had to do a project. They came up and did a project on all the solar system, all the planets, and how big they were, what they're made out of, and everything. It was pretty interesting. Then they had one that was commerce, I think is what they were. They put together a plan to build a fish pond that you would be able to farm fish out of, and had everything projected out, how much it would cost, what they should make off of it, and things like that, which was pretty interesting. These were the liberal arts ones, which were like your ones who wanted to go and be lawyers and journalists and things. And they just gave a presentation on all the Sierra Leonean presidents and all their background. But they had it all memorized to go up and talk about it right there. This girl, she got an award for being I think she traveled like 12 miles to school every day, or it might have been 23. And she was persistent on going and not getting married and everything, and letting her family marry her. And so she was real persistent on wanting to get through and finish school. And she graduated. And so they gave out some awards for ones, and they gave her one for being a persistent student there. This was the valedictorian, the son of the imam chief at the one meeting in Fatonia. He's from Fatonia. And his mom came up and stood with him while he was doing his speech. I guess it's like a pride thing to show off. And so we got to hand out diplomas and stuff. We never practiced with these guys, and I doubt any of them seen a graduation. So it was interesting. Most of them didn't know what to do, so you kind of had to help them do it. There was one girl. This girl here, I put her picture in because she was the last one that I handed out a diploma to, And we've been sitting in there for 4 hours, and it was so hot, and I shook her hand, and her hand was cold. I'm like, I don't know how she did that, but it's like, let me know. There was Scott handing them out, and Christina. There was just a group there that, group of the boys with their teachers. This is in Freetown. Last night we were there. This place was called the Hub. It was a really nice. It was a really nice hotel. It actually, so it had a shower. Well, the hotel we stayed in McKenna had a shower. The Loyal House didn't really have a shower. I mean, it kind of did, but mostly you had to just pour a bucket of water over you. So we got here. The shower had so much pressure behind it. I couldn't get the door shut. I was like falling out of it. It was crazy, but it was nice. But this is where we ate dinner that night. They had a lot of actually most places we ate at had barracuda, and it was actually pretty good tasting fish. So this was like a lookout on Freetown. Freetown's is built it's miles and miles and miles of city there, and it has a lot of real steep peaks that it's all built around. And this is like one of the lookouts, but it was cloudy that day. So by the time we traveled to go the whole way up there, we got up there and it was just clouds. You couldn't see anything. So we took pictures anyways. So on this, you can't see it, but the price of gas was 21 leones and 21.50 leones. And diesel fuel was the same price because the government makes the price. So I was talking to one guy and figuring it out. So 21.50 is about $1, but that's per liter that they're selling it at. So it would take 3 liters to make a gallon. So their price of gas was about what we're paying for it here. But the diesel fuel was cheaper. And so the guys that we hired to drive us around in Land Cruisers had diesel Land Cruisers, and he was telling them about the price of diesel fuel was cheaper there than it was here, and they couldn't believe it. They couldn't believe that they would be getting something better than Americans got. So this is kind of on that road going down towards the. So we had to take a boat across the bay. No, this is off the hotel, our balcony where we were eating dinner the night before. And that's the ocean. I don't know if I took a picture. No, I didn't take a picture there. So. Okay, so this was us driving up the hill to that lookout. And there were, I thought there was more than that to it. So anyways, there was people living like between the road and the edge. And you see they got all these little rocks. And so I figured, so I was watching them and I'm figuring out what they're doing. They're digging these big rocks out of the hillside, across the road. And they break them all up into like gravel and put it in bags to sell for construction and stuff. So the people who lived up along there, that's what their livelihood was breaking rocks. And there was one I went by, and there was a young lady, she had a big sledgehammer, and she was just, I'm like, you don't want to mess with her, I don't think. This is the U.S. Embassy, because it was about halfway up the hill from when we went up, and this was on the way back, we saw it. This is down at the beach. I don't know if there's a sign for it or not. But we pulled off at the one beach, and there was a couple fishing boats there, and they were trying to sell me these shrimp. And I'm like, I don't think I want shrimp right now. And this is where the market we went into. It was kind of funny. Samuel was like big on negotiating. So he bought something, and he was mad at the lady because she gave him a bad deal, I guess. So he's like, we're leaving, and I didn't get my stuff. so I heard him grab my stuff, and Isaac down there was helping me. And so I got it. It was like nothing from what I had in my pocket. I mean, I think I had 400 leones in my pocket, and it only cost me 4,000. I take it back. It only cost me like 700 leones for all the stuff I got. And afterwards, he goes, Samuel said he was going to leave you there, and he goes, that helped out because I was worried they were going to charge you a lot of money but they didn't. They were worried you were not going to buy anything because they were going to make you leave, and so they said to you real cheap. He said you got a really good deal. So I'm like, well, that's good. And that was the boat we rowed over to the across the river to the airport, because Freetown's all these mountainous peaks, but across the river it was real flat plains, and that's where they built the airport. So you had to pay to take this boat across, unless you lived further inland, and it would be easier to get to it. But to get from there we'd have to drive like hours back through Freetown and then around the bay to the other side. So this was the inside of the boat. It had air conditioning. It was okay. On my guy I got to sit next to, he was from Switzerland, and he was a cinematographer that was there. He was taking movie. They were trying to support some NGO there that Switzerland. He was telling me that Switzerland was looking at taxing each person like 1% to help pay for, give money to these NGOs. And I'm thinking, okay. But he was interesting to talk to. That the last one? I think that's it. So any other questions or anything else you want to know? We got there on Sunday night and we left the following Tuesday. Yeah, a little over a week. And it took us, we went to Belgium, to Brussels, and it took us 7 hours to get to Brussels from New York. And then it took us 7 hours to get from Brussels down to Freetown. And the flight that we were on, it went from Freetown to Monrovia, Liberia, which was next door, about an hour away by air though, but it was next door to Sierra Leone. And on the way back, they picked us up first, so we had to go to Liberia to pick them up. So that added an extra hour. So our flight there was like an 8-hour plus flight from the Freetown to back to Brussels. So it was a lot of airtime. And one guy had things that tracked how many miles we went. And when we got back to Washington, D.C., he said we had gone 15,000 miles. So I felt like it when I got back. I'll put it that way. I'm usually not too bad at flying and stuff like that, but it was. On the way home, when we were at Ricasa, staying in the guest house, the well was going dry at Ricasa. So they said they had all these people coming in. They wanted to make sure they had water in there. So they were trucking water up from the river and dumping it down into the well. So everybody, when we were at Ricasa, ended up getting kind of a stomach thing. And it kind of hung on to me until after I got back. So I had to go. It was still kind of hanging on for 2 weeks, and I went to the doctors, and he gave me some antibiotics and took care of it. But well, they're British originally, so they all speak English, but they speak a lot. I mean, they have like a local. It was kind of like Cajun down. Actually, I think they call it a Creole too. It was kind of like the language, like down in Louisiana, how like the local dialect kind of. They spoke things like that, because there's some things when I listened to them I could understand what they were talking about for some words, but not everything. Yeah. Yeah, that's basically what it was. Oh yeah. Yeah, even the little kids can understand pretty well. Most people, there were some local. I mean, they understand a little bit. There were some local people that, like, when Lady brought a bunch of mangoes over for us, that Salma, who was the girl from Mexico, knew some of the language. She was good to have around because she was learning the language and coming from, the other side, learning it. Where a lot of times when you ask the driver and stuff about things, they weren't good at telling you how to say things. But so some of the local natives that weren't well educated, you could say they understood, they greet you and stuff like that. But beyond that, it wasn't maybe a lot of conversation. Well, yeah, it was Fantonia. They just didn't have one stay there overnight there before until he stayed overnight. Yeah. No. And that was kind of part of it because she was trying to look for someone to sponsor her. And so they were talking to Betsy Roomer and Scott a little bit about it, but they were kind of like, she didn't have any real Presbyterian background. But she was doing a great job at evangelism, which I was kind of like, heck, help. She's helping, bring people, or introduce Jesus to people that don't know him. So, they were kind of like, yeah, the EPC won't, or the Presbyterian won't sponsor her, and they're missing out, I think. Yeah. Well, every time we had a meeting, Scott would preach and have a message, or someone else would preach and have a message. And all of us in a team would either, do like a benediction prayer or something like that. The one in Fatonia we didn't really do a message, but the ones the next day, which were closer, where we had more time there, we did like the Bible story of Jesus in the boat, sleeping in the boat in the water, and then we used one of the local guys with us to be Jesus, which the kids seemed to think that was pretty cool. So it was good. Yeah, we did. That's really what we did. And then when we were at Rocasa, I did a thing on the armor of God the one night with it was just a senior class that we had that with. Yeah, Julie. Huh? Edunations was strictly EPC. Yeah. Yeah, because the one John with Ken, I can't remember his last name, but I was talking to him and I was assuming he was EPC, but he said he wasn't. So I think there was like a little bit of a mix of pastors who knew each other when they first went over with Dean Weaver and things when they set it up. But now it's pretty much mainly EPC. Yeah, there was a lot of Methodists still there. Yeah, we went by and visited the cemetery where the missionaries were buried at and stuff. No, it was like early 2000. 2000, I think. Yeah. Yeah, because Isaac was talking and he said after the war, well, after the fighting stopped, and he was able to go to school. I think he said he was 12 by that time, but he was still able to go to school because he had gone to college and everything. And yeah, it was more like there were rebels up in the areas, in the mountainous areas where the mines were. So the mines is where they were making all the money. But, I'm sure local people weren't getting as much money. So it was kind of along those lines where the fighting went on. But the rebels kind of like had their run of the country there. Yeah. What surprised me? Wow, how hard it was riding around in the car on the roads, man. That surprised me. I mean, I've been in places that are like Mexico and things, which are not, really civilized to our standards, I guess you would say. So, I mean, a lot of that didn't faze me. The one thing I did kind of notice was when I was talking to the guys at the agricultural place that the Department of Agriculture was funding, I was talking to them about farming, but see, so a lot of the land there is all tribal land. So it's not like here where you would buy your land and you can mortgage your land to buy your stuff, your tractors and things like that. Where there, it's like the tribe would let you have some land. So if you're a farmer, you had to come up with all the stuff to do things. You didn't have the capital to be able to help you be, more productive. I think that's the one thing I kind of noticed. So there was that tribal tribal land situation in most places that kind of, because I'm sure if they were actually, there were deeds to the land and things like that, that they could like have more capital to do more with. But the way things were set up, they couldn't. Yeah, that's kind of how that's kind of what that comes into, because a lot of people, they don't own the land or even the houses. Most of them were huts, anyways. So they weren't things that you were going to go and probably mortgage a lot to get money out of a bank. Because I know Samuel was even talking about they were having problems getting money from a bank with all the stuff Edunations had there. So I think that was the main thing I was talking for. And I've talked to him at Ricasa, because Ricasa was a pretty big area, and Ricasa was real open to them Christianity and them being there. And he was talking about that so it cost them like $1,000 a month, no, like $1,000 a year to feed a student. So the senior secondary school with 300 students was costing them like $300,000 a year just to keep everybody fed. And they were talking about, so Isaac and I were talking a lot about some agricultural stuff they had talked about doing, because he had a friend who went to school for agriculture and stuff. And they kind of have some plans, but they're more concerned about being able to fund the feeding program that they have now before they want to try to invest more out and do farming on their own. They tried to do pineapple farming, but too many people got their own pineapples and would sneak in and get their own pineapples and stuff like that. So like the fish pond would be a little better. You could probably control that a little better than that. And the other thing is like if they did run into a situation where they needed rice or something for the day, they were still hours away from somewhere. It wasn't like us just running. Even if you ran to Pittsburgh to go to Costco's to get a big bag of rice, it was an hour's trip, and it was like a whole day ordeal going and getting enough food for everybody and stuff. So part of their ideas where they were talking about, he showed me a machine that they could get that would make palm oil, where you didn't have to have one lady pounding it then to nothing and squeezing it. And then the machine can make like gallon, like it would take it no time at all. And when they had a lot of availability of the pine nuts or the palm nuts to do that with. So one of the things that they're trying to do, they're starting is sponsoring teachers so that they make sure the teachers all get paid well. And it doesn't have to come out of funds that they want to use to help keep the students going at Ricasa. On the Edunations website, they have where you could donate to, you could sponsor students. You also could sponsor a teacher, and they had them broken down into weeks, and it was like $50 a week. So if there was like you just wanted to do $50 a week, or it's like average like $200 a month. That's about what they pay them. So actually, that's probably pretty good in Sierra Leone, but not if you're buying gas. That's what I was like. And most people weren't making a lot of money, or as much money as we make here, and they're paying the same price for gas. So you just have to. I'm sure the motorcycles don't use as much gas as the cars do. So yeah, exactly. and they would pile things up like the big cans, like you see they had cooking oil jugs basically that they would go and they'd get palm oil, or they would go to town and get fuel in it, and there'd be like the guy going up on the ferry with the motorcycle would be stacked up like that.
I know they had one down in the Dominican Republic. They would chase the gasoline truck and turn the valves to empty hoses.
Yeah, heck yeah. Well, there was we'd be going along, and there'd be like a little wooden shelf out along the road, and there'd be like water bottles that had palm oil in them. That was like you would just stop by and put some money in the box, and that, and then they also had fuel they'd put in it too. So, so their idea is they wanted to help. Edunations is kind of putting a push on to try to help sponsor all the teachers. And then in secondary school, senior secondary school, I think was the student. I don't know if was the student cost more than what it was. Yeah, room and board and everything. Yeah, it was definitely more when they got to senior secondary school. But if you're able to pay for all that, then that helps with the feeding and everything like that. So they don't have to try to raise all that extra money. So, and like I said, college is only $500 a year. So, or that might be a semester, but it was still a lot cheaper than. I think it was a year I think it was a year. And so it wasn't like a huge, like here, if someone said, hey, can you help me pay for college? And you'd be like, well, because we got Kent going to CCBC, and I was looking at the price of it was almost what I paid to go to Penn State 30 years ago. So it's pretty crazy. So it was totally worth going. And if anybody ever wanted to go, I would say go if you can. Yeah. Yeah, I would. I just don't know if I would do a day trip to Frantonia. I think I'd have to stay for a while. That was hard going up and turning right back around. Or I'd go on a motorcycle. If they'd ride me up on a motorcycle, I would do that. Because it was bouncy in a car and slow because there were so many holes in the road and stuff. But it was very interesting. And the kids were all very gracious for having an education that a lot of them wouldn't have if they weren't getting sponsored. And and I didn't feel, like I said, I didn't really realize the guys showing up at the airport with the guns, but I didn't feel threatened anywhere. And we didn't exactly go out and hang out in town or anything like that at night. So, and we were there during Ramadan time too, which was kind of interesting. But there was no issues. So they just had elections in June, and I think there's like still some dispute on who's actually is going to be the leader. And the one who's leader now is much more friendly to Christianity than the other opposing candidate. So I know that Isaac that I talk with once in a while, he's pretty hopeful that he's supposedly the one who's there now, the current leader is the one who won, but there's like some dispute in areas. And, I mean, you can imagine in those areas are pretty easy to cheat on the vote. So. Well, thanks for coming. But if there's any other questions, thanks. I'm just really glad I got to go, and it worked out for me because originally I was supposed to go to Nigeria, but I wanted to go to Sierra Leone, but I wanted to get my schooling done. So I was going to go by what they wanted me to do, I would do. And God made it happen, so I was able to go to Sierra Leone. So that's good. All right. Well, thanks again. Thank you so much for helping support me.